Welcome in, everyone, and thank you for listening to the 148th ever episode of the Missouri Sports Podcast, brought to you by 106 Apparel and recording from the Revel Advertising Studio in beautiful Springfield, Missouri. I'm one of your hosts, Cameron Albert, alongside my good friend and fellow Mizzou fan, Kyle DeVries. How are you doing today, Kyle?
I'm great, Cameron. You know, we've been documenting my MLB The Show experience.
True.
And thought I would bring everybody one final update.
Oh, he's retiring.
Yeah, well, no, not quite, but
okay.
Maybe me, but not my player.
Oh, okay.
It's 2026.
Wow.
And still playing for the St. Louis Cardinals.
Okay.
And I won the Cy Young Award.
It's
incredible. Actually my first full year in the majors.
Wow.
Won the Cy Young, and then we went on to win the World Series in 7 games.
Incredible.
And considering it's now July and NCAA 14 is ordered and on the way to my house,
wow.
I think it's time to hang it up on MLB The Show. So
just go out on top.
I think it was just like, I can't really top this, so I think I'm just going to be done here.
All that hard work in the minors paid off, though.
It did. And now I have so much to show for it.
Instant Hall of Famer after one season.
Pretty much. Because I was batting, too. I was batting like 400, so I don't think anybody's ever done that.
That's pretty good. Wow. Well, congratulations.
Yeah. I hope you guys are proud of me and everything I accomplished.
Oh, yes, we are, of course. Kyle, I woke up today. I feel like there's some karma came my way recently because one day, a couple weeks ago, you spoke on this podcast about your a sore in your mouth. And some kind YouTube commenter gave you some advice on it, and I just kind of made a joke out of it. Well, I woke up this morning with quite a bit of poison ivy all over my body. So here I am, in the same spot you were, reaching out to the listeners. What do I do?
We need your health tips.
Give me some tips on this poison ivy. I found some spray in the closet. I sprayed myself down this morning.
Yeah, well,
so
I would guess don't touch your eyes. I don't know if it's still contagious among your body.
It might be in this room right now with us.
It's probably growing in here now.
Probably breathing it in.
It's possible. It's a little warm in this room right now, so I can kind of feel it spreading all over my body as I speak.
It's really transferring over to me. I'm getting a little itchy.
Ugh. Sorry, everyone. All the listeners are now just like instinctively like scratching themselves, just thinking about itchiness. Well, Kyle, we've got some more football recruiting to talk about. Before we do that, though, shout out to everybody on YouTube. We just blasted through 200 YouTube subscribers. Thank you so much, everyone. Our last few videos have been some of our best received videos of all time. Hopefully, we will continue that this week. Don't forget to subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Leave us a review on the podcast platform you might be listening on. And don't forget that you can support the podcast directly over on patreon.com/Missouri Sports Pod. Kyle, before we dive deep into recruiting again, just a couple random little news nuggets. I saw on Twitter that Kobe Whiteside was named third-team All-America by Pro Football Focus.
Yeah, I mean,
That's pretty good.
I know Kobe's a good player, but that actually surprised me a little bit. I mean, it's a big honor.
Mm-hmm. Also, news came out that Jalen Knox is now going to be a member of the Ole Miss Rebels.
Yeah, I don't think we play them, though, for the next couple of years, so
Good.
Hopefully you just shouldn't have to run into them.
Wish him the best. Also, big news in the name, image, likeness story. All college players are, as of today, I think, able to profit on their name, image, and likeness. Just across the board, go. Free for all begins, and it starts right now.
Yeah, I feel like there's so little, I don't know. There's so little instruction for like the other side of things. It's so much. Yeah. It just seems like the Wild Wild West. I think Louisville put out a statement of like these are some guidelines, but I have really thinking of it from a business's perspective. What do you just straight up, like, I guess you just DM, because that's what everybody's been saying. Just DM me about a business opportunities. So.
Every Mizzou player has tweeted out the same like Notes app screenshot. Yes.
Seems a little too easy almost, but.
Some would say that's how it should have been all along.
Yeah.
Reggie Bush probably thinks that.
Who?
Reggie Bush.
Oh, man. I can't think of anyone who's just like probably hurting more than, well, I'm sure he's not hurting from it, but you know what I mean? He missed out the most.
He got his Heisman taken away.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty
That's
significant.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's doing okay.
He'll make it.
Give him his Heisman back, though, honestly.
I agree.
So who are we going to target first with some podcast sponsorship?
I don't know. Start going down the Mizzou football roster. Like, all right.
Yeah. We'll see.
Get him on the podcast. Maybe we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see. Never know.
Let's jump into some recruiting news.
Yeah.
The biggest news of the week hasn't dropped yet, but there's been lots of rumblings. There's been some crystal ball switch-ups. There's a lot of confidence surrounding two players in particular. Offensive lineman from Nebraska, Deshawn Woods, and running back from Texas, Tavorus Jones. And it seems like, and we know both of them are going to announce their decision in the next couple days, and it's trending Mizzou. I think there's every reason to believe they will be coming to Mizzou, and I'm excited.
Yeah, we talked about Tavorus Jones in particular last week about just kind of a 4-star running back that just came out of nowhere. Like a guy I personally, I follow recruiting pretty closely, and a guy I'd never heard of before about 2 weeks ago. Mizzou missed out on a couple of their running back targets that they were in C.J. Stokes and Joseph Hyman, and a couple of other ones, like a transfer that they didn't get. So Coach Drinkwitz just went out and said, well, I'm going to find a guy that is in Texas that Texas over-recruited a little bit. And I think Tavorus Jones, somehow they made the connection. They got him on campus within about a week, and he is announcing tomorrow, which I guess by the time most of you hear this will be it'll be today, so it'll be Friday, that Tavorus Jones is announcing his where he's going to go to college. And yeah, I mean, watching his film, man, he is, very good size and speed. He's, like I said, 4-star running back from El Paso, Texas. He's 5'11", 205, and that's pretty good size for a high school running back. He's shifty. He'll run over you. He'll outrun you. I personally like his film better than any of the guys that Mizzou was on before him. That's the craziest part.
That was confusing to me. It's like, okay, well, I guess this is a pretty good consolation prize. Where, like, if you stack them up side by side, is there a difference? Maybe, like, you could easily argue that this is the better prospect of the three.
I 100% agree, and I really think that. And I think that, later on in this episode, we're going to take stock of some of the guys that Missouri has on campus now, as I guess freshmen, that just hit campus in the last month. And there's 2 running backs, and honestly, I think Tavorus Jones, his film is up there, maybe even better than 2 of the running backs that are on campus right now as freshmen. So, but we'll get to that. So, I think very highly of Tavorus Jones. I think when we're assuming he's going to commit to Mizzou on Friday. That's a big get. That's a top 250 national recruit, and I think this is a testament to the staff and their awareness of his situation, because clearly a guy that probably wanted to go to Texas, and they were full, and they just acted really, really quickly.
Yeah. I believe this would be only the second 4-star or better running back from outside the state of Missouri or Kansas to commit to Missouri. The only other one was Demaria Crockett. That worked out pretty well. Jones has 2 crystal ball predictions right now on 24/7 Sports. They're both to Missouri, and they're both a 7 out of 10 confidence level. So the experts this close to commitment are predicting Missouri. Some of the writers and talking heads surrounding Mizzou, I guess that's us, are predicting him to pick Missouri. So, yeah, I definitely feel like he's going to pick the Tigers, and I'm excited.
Yeah, considering he was on an official visit last weekend and then pretty much just immediately fresh off that visit decided to announce his commitment. And I'm not really even sure who his other schools would be that he's deciding between, because I just really think he's pretty honed in on Missouri. So
yeah, his offer list is interesting. I mean, 24/7 Sports says he has offers from Alabama, Penn State, among others, and that interest was warm with Missouri, Alabama, and Penn State.
Sounds pretty good. So, expect some good news from him on Friday.
Then the other player is Deshawn Woods, another player that we've talked about before on the podcast. number 150 in the national rankings for his class. 4-star offensive lineman from Nebraska, the number 1 player in the state of Nebraska.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, I didn't do any research on this, but I can't imagine there's too many top players from Nebraska leaving the state. But maybe more so in the last 5 to 10 years. But I still think this is would be a pretty big get, and I still feel pretty good about Deshawn Woods and him coming to Mizzou. But there's probably a little bit more. There's a little bit less of a chance, I guess, than Tavorus Jones, but not a whole lot. He's deciding between Mizzou and Arizona State on noon on Saturday. But again, he recently visited on an official visit. Things seem to be trending pretty well. He was a guy who maybe his recruitment was a little bit quieter throughout the process. Didn't really know a whole lot about where he stood really until recently. But, Arizona State, cool place to go, I'm sure. Probably a pretty cool campus.
Herm Edwards.
They've
got some NCAA investigations happening right now.
There's some attractive things.
Violations.
There's some attractive things about Arizona State, and then there's some unattractive things about Arizona State, and that's definitely one of them. And I don't know all of the details, but it sounds like they're in a little bit of hot water with some recruiting violations. So, I mean, me personally, I'm not sure that's a place I want to
steer clear of those violations.
Right, Deshawn?
Places,
yeah,
man.
Just come on home.
Yeah.
Anyways, 6'5", 300 pounds, offensive tackle. Watching his film, he's got a nice big frame, very mobile feet, and I mean, obviously that's something you have to have as an offensive tackle to get out in the pass game and be able to move laterally. But I mean, he looks like he has just good size that he could probably even add on a little bit more weight and still be able to keep that good movement. So there's a reason he's ranked so highly.
Another out-of-state 4-star player that seems to be seriously considering Missouri. And again, 24/7 Crystal Ball has him 75% to Missouri, including a prediction from lead expert on 24/7 Sports, Steve Wiltfong. And he gives it a 8 out of 10 high confidence rating.
Wow. That's just...
And I think he just made his prediction in the last couple days.
Yeah. Made
that public. So he's 96% accurate on his crystal ball predictions.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, with hundreds every year. So pretty solid prediction there. But again, this one, is a little bit more open because it does seem like Arizona State is still active in the recruitment. But I think we're gonna get both of these guys.
I think so. Think they're gonna be college teammates, working together a lot.
Going into before either one of these announcements happen, a couple weeks ago we were pretty excited. Missouri was top 15 nationally in team recruiting rankings on 24/7 Sports and Rivals, right around that level. Some other teams have passed Missouri in the last couple weeks. They've reeled in some recruits, and that's dropped Missouri down to 26th in the rankings nationally. However, I did some little calculations on 24/7 Sports Class Calculator, and if they land Deshawn Woods and Tavorus Jones, first of all, those players would be the number 2 and number 3 highest ranked players in the class, only behind Sam Horn. And it would move Missouri up to 11th in the national recruiting rankings. And so just barely outside the top 10. And then if I look at the SEC rankings, Missouri would be 4th, right behind LSU, Georgia, and Texas A&M. So ahead of Alabama, which is kind of cool. Now, of course, this got me excited, and I wanted to just maybe type in somebody else's name and maybe hit calculate one more time. So I typed in Luther Burden. I'm going to do that right now just to see what would happen here. And that would jump us up to 6th in the country in recruiting rankings. And in the SEC, 3rd behind LSU and Georgia. But it's worth noting, LSU in particular, as far as SEC teams, they are just destroying it in recruiting right now. Missouri with Deshawn Woods, Tavorus Jones, and Luther Burden would have a team score of 207, would put us 6th. Okay, would be, the best recruiting class Missouri's ever had. LSU right now is sitting at 220.
Just a pedestrian 220.
Ohio State, 274.
That's not fair.
That's a level you can't even imagine how many amazing players that is. We've never seen anything close to that. We're flirting with the best recruiting class in Mizzou history, potentially. And it's going to be the difference between top 10, fringe top 10, and the top 3 schools in the class is night and day.
I never really thought about it that way. It's insane how far away the top of the top is from the rest of the pack.
And we're talking about with Jones, the running back from Texas, we're talking about Texas recruiting over him, which seems crazy. 4-star running back from your home state.
Yeah.
But right now, Texas, even with their lack of on-field success recently, sitting at a recruiting score of 199, which is good for 6th in the country right now. So these teams just get whoever they want, basically. Yeah. And, when LSU is their only competition for particular players is Georgia, Alabama, some of these other just monster recruiting schools, then that just shows you that these teams are just in another league with recruiting.
Yeah, and recruiting doesn't always translate exactly how you think it will, but for the most part, it does. When you get especially when you're stacking those kind of classes on top of each other every year or consecutive years, makes a difference. Yeah,
when that's all you know how to do is recruit 5-star players, then it's gonna turn into success. You may not every year be competing for a national championship, but you're gonna be at least competing for your conference or your division year in, year out, every single time.
Well-oiled machine.
Oh, man. So for every time we get excited, you got to kind of, take stock of where Missouri still sits nationally. But anything we can do to get close to those type of teams is...
Hey, but we're going to develop talent better than anyone, right?
We're going to do a pretty good job. We're going to do a pretty good job. And perfect segue. That starts with the incoming freshmen. We got to develop these guys, and hopefully some of them will get some playing time. If not, we'll redshirt them, try to keep them in the program, and they will be contributors down the line. So, you take it away, Kyle. However you want to organize this, we're going to talk about close to 10 to a dozen players real quick. We're going to focus on the offense today, incoming offensive players that are going to be freshmen this year, and look at maybe who will have the most impact and people that you need to keep an eye on. I've got some questions for you specifically after we talk about all the players. So, take it away.
Yeah, so this is the 2021 class, and on Rivals, I believe I saw this correctly. This seems higher than I remember, but on Rivals, this says the 2021 class was ranked 20th. For some reason, I thought it was mid-20s or upper 20s, but...
I've got them at 27 on 24/7 Sports.
Okay, so it's in the 20s range. That's pretty good. It was clear that looking at this whole list of all of this whole class and all the guys that just came on campus in June, it was definitely a defensive-heavy class. So we're going to cover defense next week. So there was probably 15 or more defensive guys they brought in this class just because of the need, probably. But we're going to talk about offense today. And so first of all, I guess we'll just talk about Tyler Macon, and a couple of these guys have already been on campus since January. So obviously you guys are really familiar with Tyler Macon at this point. And there's probably not a whole lot more we can talk about him at this point, but he's 6 foot 180 from East St. Louis. He was a 4-star quarterback. We know that the quarterback room is a little jam-packed with talent right now, and then they've got Sam Horn coming in next year. So it's a pretty full room, and I think Tyler Macon's really talented. I'm not sure what the path to playing time is going to look like for all of these individual players, because obviously not everyone is probably going to get the chance to play. But I still love Tyler Macon as a player. I love what he represents, just kind of as the leader of this class, coming from St. Louis and being influential with other recruits. And I would definitely say he probably had some pull in Mookie Cooper coming on over and Dominic Lovett, which we're going to talk about in a minute as well. So I don't know. You got to love Tyler Macon as a Mizzou fan. Whether he ends up having a great career or not at Mizzou, that's yet to be seen.
I've kind of, in my head, had Tyler Macon as like, you have to just go with me here, like the anti-James Foster. So like, if for those that don't remember, James Foster was a quarterback commit years ago that I was super excited about, and he seemed like energized about the program and was like he was from Alabama.
Yeah, somewhere in the South, I think.
And he was like actively trying to get other players to come to Mizzou. It seemed like he was active on social media and stuff.
I think he said he was infamously like 110% committed or something. He did one of those over 100% committed ones.
And then, sure enough, he decommitted, went to Texas A&M. I think he's still there, but I don't know.
I'm pretty sure he was committed to several different places, maybe Florida State, maybe spent some time there for a while. I don't know. But
anyway,
point well
this
taken.
Is like the opposite of that, where the guy, up to a point, they were kind of the same, active on social media, trying to get other players to join them at Missouri.
And a 4-star quarterback in the Barry Odom era that was big time. He was really playing with our hearts there for a while.
Exactly. So similar situation here. We got like a highly ranked quarterback prospect. It's worth being very excited about, and electric playmaker in high school, and getting his buddies to maybe come to Mizzou too. But he's here. He's on campus. He's enrolled. He played in the spring game.
Yep.
Like there's no like how the playing time and everything shakes out from here on out. That's going to be a mystery a little bit. Maybe I'll press you for a prediction here later, but he's on the team. Like he's all in as of right now. So that's why I think of him as like the anti-James Foster, just like did the opposite basically.
He's doing exactly everything he's supposed to do, and I think that enrolling in the spring is such a big thing for some of the freshmen that are coming in. I think that just gives them such a huge step up on the other guys coming in. I mean, they're teammates, but in some ways, these guys are competing against each other for playing time, and that's why they're there. So getting a leg up on the teammates and kind of getting in front of the coaches and getting to work out in the program, that's a big deal. So we'll talk about another guy that also enrolled in the spring, and that's Dominic Lovett. And of course, teammate of Tyler Macon in high school, so obviously those guys are close. And Dominic Lovett was originally committed to UCLA, I believe, and then he ended up flipping to Mizzou kind of late in the process. So he's a 5'10", 175-pound wide receiver, 4-star, and again, he played in the spring game. And it's kind of sometimes it's hard to read where guys are going to be able to make an impact when they first get to campus, but I definitely think Dominic Lovett has impressed, and I think he's got a shot to not only play significantly this year, but really make an impact in the wide receiver room.
He was committed to Arizona State.
Okay, so he had a high school teammate, I believe, that went to UCLA. Maybe I was confusing the two of those guys.
Dominic Lovett. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say he heard about the recruiting allegations and got out.
Maybe he was one of the players that was brought on campus when they weren't supposed to have players on.
Maybe so.
On this podcast, I've often cited 24/7 Sports national recruiting analyst Alan Trieu with his sort of evaluation, and Missouri doesn't get a lot of guys that are good enough to get an official evaluation from him on their website. So when they do, I like to point it out. He has Dominic Lovett projected out to be a NFL draft pick in the 4 to 7 round region, and he compares him to NFL wide receiver Randall Cobb as that type of athlete.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Kind of a slot guy, maybe kind of in college, he'll probably be all over the place, but maybe taking some shorter passes and some quick passes. He's very, very fast, good hand, so I like that comparison a lot.
He specifically says that he plays faster in games than he's going to measure in, official.
That seems good.
Measurements, yeah. So that's very exciting.
All right, we will move on to a couple of running backs here. First one we're going to talk about is B.J. Harris, and he is 5'10", 185 from Chattanooga, Tennessee. And he was like the one guy who didn't sign in December, and we were like a little bit nervous about what was going on, and I'm not sure I ever really heard what was going on, but he ended up signing in February. He made it to campus in June, and we talked about Tavorus Jones a few minutes ago. I honestly think I probably like Tavorus Jones' film even better than BJ Harris and Taj Butts, but I still really like what BJ Harris brings to the table. I think he's an explosive athlete, and he's a little, I don't know if a bigger back is the right word, but I mean, I definitely think that he won't shy away from, I don't know, from, what am I trying to say here? From contact. That's a good word I'm trying to think of here. But he ultimately, though, I think he's shifty enough to where he sometimes won't even have to shy away from contact because you're just going to miss. And I think he can get pretty involved in the pass game potentially as well. So definitely a well-rounded athlete. Anything to add?
No.
All right, we'll move on to Taj Butts. And he is a 5'11", 190-pound running back from St. Louis, De Smet. And I definitely, I think of Taj Butts as maybe, I don't know if he'll be as involved in the pass game, but he's kind of, I think Taj Butts and BJ Harris can kind of complement one another a little bit, where Butts is probably might be on the ground a little bit more. They might use him on the goal line some, but, and obviously it's the same situation that we talked about with Tyler Macon. I mean, we're bringing in probably 2 running backs every single year. Not everybody's going to be able to play, but wouldn't be surprised to see either one of these guys definitely make an impact at some point.
Yeah, it's, I mean, 2 3-star players, one from the state of Missouri, one a neighboring state in Tennessee, and running back is just one of those positions where you just have to fill up the room every year. You have to bring in more guys because there's going to be, players that fall out of favor or just aren't as good as advertised, and you got to have fresh bodies ready to step in. And it's a position where you're going to probably play 3 guys every year. And with the new redshirt rules, it's interesting because you can get those players into 4 different games and let them try stuff out and see how it goes, and still save a year of eligibility. But yeah, I just think the more players in that regard, the better.
Yeah, and I think Mizzou's been pretty fortunate the last few years with like health of running backs. Larry Roundtree was kind of a tank. He seemed to never get injured or anything, and same with Tyler Beatty. Both of those guys have stayed really healthy, so there hasn't been a whole lot of running back turnover or anything in the last few years.
There's just kind of always been that third running back that hasn't really been relied on too much, but gets opportunities here and there. And I feel like that's maybe where a couple of these guys could, and there's other running backs already on the roster that are all those guys are going to be fighting for kind of that third spot, I think, behind Beatty and
Ledger Young.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more uncertainty in the running back room this year, and there definitely could be like 3 running backs used consistently as opposed to last year where there was mainly 1 and a little bit of Tyler Beatty.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on to tight ends, and we'll talk about Ryan Horstkamp, and he's a 6'4", 225-pound tight end from Washington, Missouri. And I remember this being pretty big get at the time, and I don't really feel like his rankings reflect how good of a player he is and how intense his recruitment got. I mean, I'm pretty sure we were fighting off Alabama there to land him, so that was definitely a big deal. And he enrolled in the spring as well, so he played in the spring game, had a couple of targets in that game. So I definitely think he's got the potential to be very well-rounded. I think he can receive. I think he can be a good blocking tight end. He's a really good athlete, so definitely excited about what he can bring to the table. The other tight end is Gavin McKay, and he's also 6'4", 215 from Memphis, Tennessee. And I think of Gavin McKay as a little bit more of a receiving threat. I think he's very athletic and good route runner, and which is something that, honestly, I'm not really sure we have on the team right now. I mean, obviously tight ends, we have some tight ends that can catch passes, but he might come in and immediately be one of the most athletic tight ends we have. I don't know if he'll see playing time immediately because I feel like a lot of times tight ends just take a little bit longer to develop and get where they need to be.
Unless you're Alberto,
yeah. But if he can develop into a nice pass catcher, I definitely think that would be, I mean, he'll be utilized a lot.
I feel like there's even more, there's far and away more question marks and intrigue around the tight end position for this upcoming season than there is at running back or wide receiver.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, we just need, I mean, Daniel Parker Jr. does his thing and he does it really well, but we need that more dynamic receiving threat to emerge at tight end pretty desperately, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. Daniel Parker Jr., not really a receiving threat consistently. He can catch the ball, but he's not going to go catch 10 touchdowns or anything like Alberto.
Yeah.
Messiah Swinson was a guy that's been in the program for a couple of years, but has been hurt and hasn't really emerged as maybe we thought he would, but he might be the guy that has that chance to do that this year. But Gavin McKay, definitely, I definitely see a path for him to make a difference at some point. All right, we'll move on to the offensive line, and we've got Connor Tollison, who is a 6'5", 285-pound lineman from Jackson, Missouri. And honestly, I would kind of put him in the same boat as Huerskamp, where he's a 3-star on Rivals, but his offer list is 4 or 5-star, and he had Alabama in pursuit like the week he committed. And
yeah, getting him on board when we did, I think, was huge.
Yeah.
Because there's a decent and maybe he was just like locked in on Mizzou the whole time, and we didn't need to worry. But I think if his recruitment dragged on much longer, then it would have been really hard to keep him home.
Yeah, and he really shut it down too. I mean, once he committed, it didn't really seem to waver, or there was nothing that came up at all after that. And then lastly, but definitely not least, on the offensive line, we got our guy, Jamarion Gooch. 6'8", 340 from Seymour, Tennessee. I just also realized that every single player we talked about, every offensive player in the 2021 class is from either Missouri or Tennessee. Wow.
Tennessee, the pipeline.
But Mr. Gooch, he's very large and he's got a chance to be pretty special if he can convert into that athleticism on the field. And I would assume he'd probably play on the interior somewhere, but man, I mean, we've got some bodies on the offensive line.
What do you have his measurables at?
6'8", 340.
Yeah, 24/7 says 6'7.5", 358.
Oh my. Yeah, I mean, this is his high school profile too, and so obviously, I mean, who knows what he is now? These measurables were probably taken over a year ago.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what his official Mizzou. Actually, he will be fascinating to see how his body develops in his time at Missouri, because offensive linemen especially can see some pretty big fluctuations in their weight during their college career. Because if they're not going to play a ton early, I feel like a lot of coaches and like strength and conditioning coaches will want them to maybe slim down a little bit and then bulk back up with more muscle.
For sure.
And so if he's not needing to be relied on day one, then I can really see them getting to work on his physique and just like transforming him into an absolute monster physically.
I looked him up on Mizzou's football roster, and this says 6'7", 370.
My gosh. Holy cow.
What a beast.
That's incredible.
Yeah, definitely seems like a candidate to probably take a year or two to kind of fine-tune his body and make sure it's where they want it to be. But, man, if they can get it to where they want it to be and make sure he maintains some of that athleticism.
Yeah.
Good grief.
Watch out.
Yeah. And then speaking of offensive line, I mean, we'll just go ahead. There's a couple of transfers that I guess weren't officially in the 2021 class, but
they're newcomers,
but
though.
Came in with those guys, and we'll just touch on another offensive lineman, and that is EJ Ndoma Ogar, and he transferred from Oklahoma. So former 4-star recruit, originally from Texas, spent 1 year, I believe, at Oklahoma, and then transferred over to Missouri. So I believe he's going to have 4 years of eligibility. That's a 6'3", 330-pound offensive lineman. So, again, just assembling an absolute beast of a line here, potentially, for the future.
And Missouri's offensive line, size-wise, hasn't been lacking in recent years.
Right.
I feel like the Barry Odom and staff did a pretty good job of realizing, we have to step up our defensive and offensive line recruiting to match what's going on in the SEC. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe Missouri's offensive line, while they played really, really well in the early days of the SEC, they were a little bit undersized for SEC play, and that has not been the case the last couple seasons.
Yeah, obviously when we came into the SEC, we had some of the best offensive linemen we've had and defensive linemen we've had in a long time. But I agree. I think we probably needed to change our recruiting strategy a little bit. And I think that
you're not always going to find those. I mean, that was just kind of like a special situation that Missouri had some kind of undersized offensive linemen that were just excellent, NFL caliber players by the end of their career.
Developed them so well. That was definitely a staple of Gary Pinkel. And if you can't trust yourself to develop them, then you're going to have to bring them in at the size they need to be, or at least close to it.
Yeah.
All right. And then the very last guy we'll talk about as a transfer that's coming in with his class is Mookie Cooper, a name you probably know pretty well at this point.
You think he'll see the field much?
I think he'll see the field. He played in the spring game, so he's been here for 6 months. He's just a decent player, just a former. I don't know. He might have been a 5-star. I don't know, but
he was borderline 4 to 5, kind of right on that cutoff.
Yeah,
most places had him as a 4.
Yeah. So
went to Ohio State. Got recruited over. We just earlier talked about Ohio State's recruiting rankings and how it's just mind-boggling how many good players they get every year. So there's going to be some atrophy there, and Missouri was on the receiving end of that. He transferred back home.
Yeah,
and
seemed pretty deliberate. Seemed pretty quick.
Yeah.
Once he was out of Ohio State, he was at Mizzou pretty quickly. And we probably have Coach Drinkwitz and also maybe Tyler Macon and Dominic Lovett to thank for that.
He seems very bought in. His family seems very pro Mizzou. Like, they are excited that he's going to be close to home, seeing the field a lot, making plays. Obviously, I'm excited for that. We talked about him a lot. I'm sure there's an episode back a ways with his name in the title where we broke down his decision to come to Missouri. But as far as him this season on the field, I think it's just really, I've said how excited I am probably 15 different times this episode, but it's going to be really intriguing to see what they do with him on the field. He can literally line up everywhere, including the backfield, and he's fast enough to play outside. He's a good enough route runner to play in the slot. You could literally hand the ball off to him up the middle if you wanted to.
Yeah, I definitely think he will be a little bit of a Swiss Army knife, maybe a little bit kind of like Jalen Knox was used last year, where he'll play outside, he'll play in the slot, he'll start in the backfield, he'll be doing some Tyreek Hill back and forth pre-snap motion. I'm sure they'll have him running all over the place. So I agree, that's going to be exciting, and he's
running
just
into the end zone.
Yes. And I mean, when you look at the current starters who we anticipate to start, probably Kiki Chisholm and Toski Dove. I mean, Mookie Cooper will just bring something totally different than those other two guys bring, and just probably incredible speed that we probably haven't seen in a while. So that'll be exciting, and just a perfect example of a talented guy from in-state that just I think is going to be able to. He went off to Ohio State but decided to come back, and I think he's going to be happy with his decision to stay home and play for the home state.
I just can't help but smile when I look at his picture on the recruiting page, when I think about him being a part of the program. I don't know. Make me happy, make me smile.
Very happy.
And it's good precedent. I mean, obviously he hasn't played an actual game yet, but man,
he just never plays. He just man. After we hype him up, he never sees the field. I don't think that's going to happen.
Depressing.
Yeah, in the spring game, it definitely felt like Bazelak was looking his way a lot. And I obviously that was the spring game. That means very little, and it's basically a practice. But it felt like he was already looking like his safety valve a little bit, where he was almost his first read on a lot of plays.
I'm ready for it. I'm here for it.
I'm here
for it. That all the players coming in on offense?
That's all the players on offense, unless I missed somebody. I believe that's it. It was, like I said, very defensive-heavy class, so we'll have a lot more names to talk about next week.
Defensive heavy class, but that's a solid group.
That is.
That's even without Mookie Cooper, because he was not a standard recruit for that class.
Right.
That's
I mean, there just wasn't a whole. I mean, you think about the makeup of the offense right now. There's not a whole lot of immediate needs in certain areas. So these guys fill roles that will be opening up in a couple of years, not necessarily immediately.
Right. Yeah, I think offensive line maybe is a little bit of a question mark coming into the season. We'll do more roster previews and stuff a little bit closer to the season starting, but you can't fix the current offensive line with the incoming freshmen this season. That's just a position that takes more time. So if you're looking for some instant impact on the offensive line, it's probably not going to be there. So hopefully somebody that's already here will step up at that position specifically. That all for this week?
Said you had some questions for me or something?
Well, yeah.
Or did we already we covered them?
We kind of covered them as we go through. Who do you think? Do you think any of these players? Not talking about Mookie Cooper, and pretty much you can, mention Dominic Lovett if you want. Do you think any players like him will not even be considered for a red shirt and will play, in 6 or 8 games this year or contribute significantly, maybe even if it's on special teams?
Yeah.
Or do you think pretty much all these players are candidates for red shirt?
I think everybody is. I don't. Probably not Lovett, like you said. Probably not Lovett and Mookie Cooper, but everybody else, I would say, if I had to guess, they'd probably redshirt. If I had to guess, one guy that maybe won't is probably Ryan Horskamp, just because I think the tight end room has a little bit more uncertainty, and he was here in the spring, so he's been in the program for a little bit. I think that he might be able to get enough playing time to where he would shed the shirt, if you will. But I would say for the most part, most of these guys are probably looking at a red shirt.
Does Tyler Macon take the first snap of any game this season?
I'll say no.
Okay. I tend to agree with you there. Does Tyler Macon get a snap in more than 4 games this season?
I'll say no. More than 4 games, so that means he'd have to
lose the red shirt.
Yeah, I say no.
I think it's very likely he gets action in exactly 4 games.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, absolutely would love to see him come in, and if there's some blowout games, which I hope there are, would love to see him get in there and run around a little bit and throw some passes. Obviously, in the spring game, he was pretty mobile, so that's something he can do.
Man, I want to just keep talking about the quarterback position, but we got to save some of that for closer to the season starting.
Got to save it.
All right, now I'm done. That's all my questions.
Okay. Yeah, exciting stuff. Be on the lookout probably on Twitter and stuff this weekend. Tavorus Jones announcing on Friday, Deshawn Woods on Saturday, and then always thinking about Ahmad Robinson as well. I don't know if he's named a specific announcement date, but the cornerback from East St. Louis who has very strong ties with Luther Burden. I think he's pretty much a Mizzou lock. I think it's mainly a matter of when he announces, not if, to the good guys. So
we're ready.
A couple of guys to keep an eye on. It's going to be a good weekend. Have a happy 4th of July. America. All right. That's all I got for him. You can find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. We're on Twitter at Mizzou Sports Pod. And you can email us at MissouriSportsPod@gmail.com.
You can find our t-shirts and stickers on our online shop, MissouriSportsPod.BigCartel.com.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. We will see you next week.